With Nelson Jordan, I'm Chris Nelson. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page so that you can get caught up on all of our content. Please follow us on all of our social media pages and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Today, we are going to be discussing the sudden and shocking retirement of Auburn Tigers head men's basketball coach Bruce Pearl, the Detroit Lions at the Baltimore Ravens, and some injury news around the sports world. So Nelson, let's go ahead and get started with the truly shocking, for me, stunning retirement of Bruce Pearl as the head coach of the Auburn Tigers men's basketball team, which he had a role he had been in for the past 11 seasons. He had just taken them to the SEC regular season title and their second Final Four in the past 7 years, the only two Final Fours they have ever been to. His son Steven will take over as the head coach and has been given a 5-year contract from Auburn. I don't know about you, but I didn't even know who Steven Pearl was. I had to go look him up when this news came out to find out.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I found out that he played for Tennessee for 4 years, which coincided with Bruce Pearl's final 4 years as the head coach there. And then a few years later, when Bruce Pearl took over as the head coach at Auburn, he became an assistant S&C. Truth be told, I don't even know what that is. I should probably have looked it up before we got on here, but I didn't. Next couple of years was a DBO for Auburn. And then he got promoted to be an assistant for Auburn, a role he has been in for the past 6 seasons. I'm sorry, for 6 seasons he wasn't, and for the past 2 years, past 2 years, he's been an associate head coach and now promoted to this role. So let's go ahead and get your thoughts first, and then I can give some of mine. What do you have on this? How are you feeling about?
I think the NCAA men's basketball world, I think they lost a great head coach. I think he was one of the many, many faces that you could put up with the ranks of, from the likes of a Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, a head coach of also the Syracuse Orangemen. I forget his name.
Jim
Boeheim. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you can put his name up there because that's what he did when it came to cultures. That's what he did when he came to running programs. We saw that at Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee was as lively as it was. Granted, they had some problems. Well, he did, and then he got let go. But we saw what he did with Auburn. I mean, he brought them from a school that had nothing to do with basketball. They were a football program to begin with only. And he turned them into a powerhouse in the SEC. And last year they were so close to get to the Natty title game. And it's unbelievable that, what kind of career Bruce Pearl had. You kind of touched up on it a little bit, but I mean, to have, in his lifetime, 706 total wins, over a 72.5% winning percentage. That's both as an assistant and a head coach. Remarkable. And the fans loved him the most because of his personality. I think you're going to touch upon this a little bit more in depth, but he connected with the university and the communities, like from, up and down. I mean, he would always be at the games, whether it was, for the women's basketball games, or he would be with the fans, whether it was in rallies and stuff like that. He was just so connected with everybody. There's a reason why that, he had, superlatives like Papa Smurf during the COVID era, which I'm probably sure you know. And also he had another name that everybody gave him as well, the Incredible Bulk. I don't know if you remember that too, when he stripped off his shirt as he knew that they had won to get to the Final Four. So this coach is going to be deeply lost just because of the infectious selfishness that he provided to his players on and off the court and to everybody else. We truly have lost somebody. And I don't know if you got any takes extra beyond that, but Steven Pearl, I know that your dad came out and he said that, nothing's really going to change here, but you got some really, really big shoes to fill. And I hope you do, because that's a big, big name that, like I said, the college basketball world lost.
I think there's a number of things to touch on with this because he did retire, so we're not just looking back at the 11 years he was the head coach at Auburn, which we absolutely are, but his coaching career as a whole.
Overall.
Absolutely. You also have to look at how this impacts Auburn for this coming season and the next 5 years with the contract they gave Steven Pearl. And that's realistically, at least in the old school way, I know times have changed dramatically, but that's how long it takes to really build a program. And right now, this is a team that's in a good place. They just went to the Final Four. They have been a top program for years, but now they bring in this recruiting class that's coming in this year, and they'll be coached by Steven Pearl, not Bruce. And it doesn't happen much anymore, but if they were to stay for 4 or even 5 years, or some of them were to redshirt, based on this contract, we'll see how it goes, but that would be their coach throughout that time. So it's interesting to look at what the future of Auburn's going to be, and maybe I'll come back to you to see if you have any thoughts on that, to touch on it a bit after I'm finished. But look, the first thing I want to touch on is the timing of this, because I find it very interesting. And I want to go back all the way to October of 1997, when Dean Smith shockingly retired. He had just gotten to the Final Four. He was bringing back all of his star players from that team. They were set to be in position to not only get back to a Final Four, but really win a national championship and maybe even run the table. And he suddenly retired and turned things over to his longtime assistant, Bill Guthridge, and they did get back to the Final Four. We'll gloss over the specific details with that. But that's something that's become a bit of a trend. And, I mean, you look at Wisconsin now, going back 10 years ago. They had just gone to the national championship and back-to-back Final Fours. And Bo Ryan suddenly retired before conference play started. He had been the coach, during the season and retired out of nowhere. It was such a strange decision a little less than 10 years ago now. And you look at some more of these. Last year, you only have to go back a year. We saw Tony Bennett do it right before the season started. And they had to have one of his longtime assistants step in and be an interim head coach. And it obviously went very poorly. The program wasn't exactly in the best of places. And as college basketball fans, I think we may have been a little bit happy to move on from Tony Bennett and the boring style that they played. And now they have a new head coach, which has generated a lot of buzz. And look, I mean, just you named some of them, but just talking about the ACC over the past 5 years, the coaches we've seen retire. Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, who's another coach who retired after taking his team to the Final Four. Yeah. Of course, he announced his retirement prior to this season because he needed everybody to celebrate him. That's what happens. You have a massive ego, and then you lose your arch rival at home in your finale and the Final Four to end your career. But and we saw Jim Boeheim retire. We saw Mike Bray retire. And now, following this past season, we saw Leonard Hamilton retire in addition to Tony Bennett before the season. So that's a lot of ACC stalwarts throughout the 2010s and into the early 2020s that we'd grown so accustomed to. And now we see a big name from the SEC who retires, who's been there for the past 11 years. And you just start to look at the change of college basketball. And we knew this was coming with the way the landscape has changed. And so now these new guys have to figure out a way to navigate that. And there's so much uncertainty, surrounding what it's going to look like going forward. We just don't know how that's going to play out. But I agree with most of what you said about Bruce Pearl. He's a proven coach. We know that he had the recruiting violations at Tennessee and was ultimately let go. Spent a few years at ESPN doing that job and then got the job at Auburn. And look, I can remember how much excitement there was when Auburn hired him. I can even remember, I actually can't believe it was 11 years ago. It doesn't seem that long ago. But I can remember Charles Barkley sitting there on national TV and saying, hey, we got Bruce Pearl. We're going to be good. And look, it took a few years. Those first few years he was there, they were awful. And then in that fourth year, in that 27-18 season, they were good. They went to the NCAA tournament. They put together a good season. And they turned around the next year and went all the way to the Final Four for the first time in program history. And it may be forgot at this point in time, but if their star big man hadn't gotten hurt in the Sweet 16 win over North Carolina, there's a good chance that team wins the national championship. I mean, they beat a Kentucky team in the Elite Eight that they've been swept by in the regular season. And there was obviously some controversy in that Final Four game against Virginia. There were some blown calls by the officials. Virginia had to travel, the double dribble, and so on and so forth. That cost Auburn that game. And if they'd had their big man, I don't even think it would have come down to that. It would not have been close. And they go to that national championship. Who knows how it goes against Texas Tech, who had a really good team as well. But, I mean, that team was special, and we know how good they were last year. I mean, what a great team that was in getting back to the Final Four. So, we're talking about a program that had never really done anything. So, I don't know what to expect from Stephen Pearl. I wish him all the best and Auburn all the best, and I wish Bruce Pearl the best in his retirement. But I think there have to be some questions for Auburn going forward, both for this season and for next. And I think Bruce Pearl did make the decision to retire now because the timing seems odd, but I think he did it because he wanted to be able to go through the full offseason and establish that roster and that team to allow a smooth transition for his son to take over and ensure that his son would get to take over, which clearly Auburn supported by giving him a 5-year contract. And now, right before practice starts, his son can step in and get this thing rolling for him and be comfortable. So we'll see how it goes. But we know how tough the SEC is at this point in time and the investment they have made into the sport. So it's not going to be easy. We know the players Auburn lost from last year and what the outlook is for them this season. And we'll obviously touch more on that in the coming weeks. We're only in September right now, so we're not quite there yet. But think this, for my last thought, may go down as the biggest what if for Auburn fans since Charles Barkley left early for the NBA. I mean, that's really what it feels like.
That's a
because
big statement.
Bruce Pearl, you said it, he built them into a bit of a powerhouse. I know they never reached the national championship game, but this is a program, again, for the umpteenth time, had never been to a Final Four. He took them to 2 in 7 years. Most programs don't accomplish that. No. I mean, that's amazing. And so you're sitting there like, we just went to the Final Four. What could this look like for us going forward if he doesn't make this decision and step away? And I'm sure there's a lot of uncertainty at Auburn, a lot of mixed feelings, mixed emotions, because they're grateful for the 11 years that he gave them, and they want to look back on those. But at the same time, you're getting ready to look forward to this season, and you just don't know. And not to mention, the football team just had a tough loss by a touchdown at Oklahoma on Saturday a couple days earlier. So it's interesting times. But did you have anything on the outlook for Auburn before we move on? Not just this coming season, but the next 5 years and beyond.
I do, and it's going to go to every team. But I do want to make an emphasis just to kind of exclamate what you said. It's very hard, especially for an Auburn fan, to kind of say, why would he leave now when it took an 18-point comeback to win against us to get to the final? 18 points.
That Florida team was better than them, to be fair.
I know, but still, they were that close. They were that close, and Florida went on a really good run that we haven't seen in years.
Yeah.
And they were that close.
They lost a lot of guys.
Right. And also, it has to be said, too, I think one of the purest things about Bruce Pearl that we really, really, really have to say, he was one of the generational talents as coaches that would develop players. He really was. And that's what the names, especially in, college basketball, college football, Saban, Krzyzewski, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I mean, he's got that kind of pedigree. And now with the NIL and how it is, I mean, yes, we get it, Steven. You're going to be using your dad's name as a reputation, and hopefully so. But with NIL, it's a big curveball. And we're now looking, especially in the basketball landscape, players are transferring left and right, just like it is in football. So this is not going to be, I'm going to recruit you. You're going to develop into a star here in 3 years. Everybody wants one and done. 2 years and done. So it's going to be a challenge for Steven and every other coach that is taking over a big name going forward. That's my final thought.
Yeah, I think we'll likely have a lot more thoughts on that going forward. Maybe when we get into the off season, the spring and the summer, when we're in a little bit of slower sports seasons. I definitely think you and I have a lot of thoughts on that, and we'll have a lot more data to go by based on what happens this season. We're already into football, so.
Yeah.
The Detroit Lions went to Baltimore and beat the Ravens 38-30 in an immensely entertaining game. I do want to get your thoughts on this, but before I do, I have some quick notes. I'll throw some stats and information here to set the table. So, obviously, as I mentioned, there were almost a combined 70 total points scored in this game, which shows the entertainment value of it. The Baltimore Ravens were without, on offense, their first-team All-Pro fullback Patrick Ricard, their tight end Isaiah Likely, and their defense was without perennial Pro Bowl defensive lineman Nnamdi Madubuike, their Pro Bowl edge rusher Kyle Van Noy, and former multiple-time All-Pro cornerback Jair Alexander, who just can't stay healthy. And on the Detroit Lions side of things, they were without their defensive end Marcus Davenport, who's been placed on IR. Now, the Detroit Lions offense racked up over 425 yards of offense, and defensively, they had 7 sacks on Lamar Jackson. And just to put in perspective how remarkable that is, that ties the most times Lamar Jackson has been sacked in a game, career high. The last time it occurred was 4 years ago. He hasn't been sacked that many times in a game in any game the previous 3 seasons. The Baltimore Ravens also didn't record a sack for it. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I believe the first time in the past 4 years as well. The last time they had a game in which they didn't record a sack was that 2021 season as well. They had a sack in every single game the previous 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. So some stunning stuff there. Obviously, the injuries played a massive part, but what were your takeaways from the game on the whole?
I'll be the first one to say it again. I owe massive apologies to Detroit and their fan base, because this was an absolute, we're showing up to the Ravens' nest and we're going to beat the brakes off of you and play bully ball. And my God, did that offensive line just push around that defense all day for, the Ravens. Now, granted, it seemed to be like back to back. They were throwing, one would score a touchdown, the other one would follow suit. But before you knew it, Baltimore's defense just got worn out. They got tired. They were not able to keep up on some of those bigger plays that Goff made, or heck, that Dan Campbell and company they had dialed up. I did not expect for both, in my opinion, Knuckles and Sonic to go absolutely berserk.
I think we should have the other way around. Sonic and Knuckles. Sonic is the star of the games.
I mean, it was just an absolute domination on the ground. I just couldn't believe it. 218 yards total against the Ravens.
But
the injuries. Yeah, right.
Can't harp on that enough.
Right, but the Ravens were ranked top half of the league against the run.
But you're missing two Pro Bowlers up front. I mean,
sure, but my biggest weakness going into the game, I'm just explaining my POV here, was their pass defense, because their pass defense is absolutely horrid. But I thought that from the jump, and like you said, Detroit, they played this perfectly. They were throwing some quick action stuff, then they started pounding, and then before you know it, boom, quick passes over the top. Amon-Ra going ham as usual. A nice, beautiful fourth down, ice-killing play dialed up.
4th and 2.
I mean, it was just incredible what I saw from the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
And that offensive line, which I was giving a lot of, hey, there's some concern here. No, that interior of the offensive line was just eating everybody up.
Yeah.
Goff had all day to throw. It was just unreal. And yeah, sure, you talked about the score 30-30. We got to remember, that last touchdown by Lamar to Andrews, that was in garbage time. Reality speaking, this should have been...
I don't feel that way. It was a one-possession game. That made it a one-possession game. They would, if they somehow recover the onside kick, they have a chance to tie it. So I don't think that's garbage time. Garbage time is when you're down by at least 3 scores and you score. That's a whole different, with seconds remaining, different situation. This wasn't garbage time.
You feel one way, I feel a different way about it.
The Lions may have been playing prevent defense, and they deserve to be criticized for that if that was the case. And I mean, they had a 16-yard sack and let the Ravens go score a touchdown anyway. I mentioned the 7 sacks. There were at least a few of those in which the Ravens overcame them and scored touchdowns, including on that last drive that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's why I've said it before. I feel that sacks are the most overrated stat.
But yeah, actually, you know what? I got some final things to say, but you can go ahead and keep going.
Yeah, so I want to start by touching on that interior offensive line because I've mentioned this previously, but the Philadelphia Eagles last year had their perennial first-team All-Pro center, Jason Kelsey, retire, and they simply took their right guard, Cam Jurgens, and moved him to center. And all he does is goes and has a Pro Bowl center. They replaced him at right guard with Mekhi Becton, who's now with the Los Angeles Chargers playing right guard, who was a left tackle his whole career, college and with the Jets prior to that, high draft pick. And so the Eagles have another new right guard now. But the Lions did something similar because they also looked great last night. They have a second year out their top 2 rushers. I mean, how much pressure are you really going to be able to get going up against those tackles and with the way the interior offensive line was playing? And you're right. Jahmyr Gibbs, Sonic with that speed, and David Montgomery, Knuckles with that power, they were a nightmare for the Baltimore Ravens defense with the guys they were missing. I mean, David Montgomery just took it to them, man. Amon-Ra St. Brown, what a game he had. What a game he always has. Look, Jamar Chase is unquestionably the best wide receiver in the league by far, and his speed is unmatched. Justin Jefferson is definitely the second best wide receiver in the league. The next guy up, and I know there's guys in that conversation like CeeDee Lamb and maybe some others, but the next guy up is definitely Amon-Ra St. Brown. And if you're asking me which one of the 3 I would take, despite the fact the other 2 are clearly better, I would take Amon-Ra St. Brown. That guy never drops the ball. He has such strong hands. He blocks, and he blocks well for a wide receiver.
Really well.
He's just so strong and powerful with his game. His route running is so crisp. He's in such sync with Jared Goff. Just the way he plays, he is absolutely tremendous. I mean, he's amazing, man. Watching him is absolutely incredible. And we expected this game to be a bit of a shootout with those offenses, and that's what we got. And it was extremely entertaining. It was a great game. It was well played. It was awesome. On the Ravens side of things, we have to mention Mark Andrews had a great game. You mentioned the touchdown he had at the end, which was a great play. He had another one earlier. Overall, I mean, he was a problem for that Lions defense. He really had a great game out there. Yeah. He was tremendous. So, and they're without Isaiah Likely, so they need him to take on the full role of being the tight end. And he's great blocking, too. He had a great game blocking and receiving. I mean, he really delivered, but Yeah, look, it was a really fun game to watch. It really was a tremendous Monday football game. It lived up to the hype, and for the Ravens, I think you look at this. We have all these guys out. If we're fully healthy, we'll be okay. But we don't want to have to play that team in the Super Bowl. I think that's what you take away from it. Let's hope that team doesn't get to the Super Bowl, so we don't have to deal with them. But go ahead. You said you had a few more things.
Yeah, I had a few more thoughts. One thing's for sure. I think we talked about this last time we were talking about the Ravens and the Bills. Derrick Henry, man, this is the third fumble you got in a row, man. Something's got to change. I mean, this is uncharacteristic of Derrick Henry, but as soon as he had that fumble, the game flipped on its head.
I don't agree with that.
That's the way I saw it.
First of all, I do want to touch briefly. What a play by Aiden Hutchinson. The hustle play to come up behind him and punch that ball. It was a great play. I don't know how much you can put on Derrick Henry. It's a great play by Aiden Hutchinson. And the other aspect of that is all they got out of it was a field goal. So they would have won the game anyway. And the Lions had the lead when that took place. They already had a 4-point lead. That just pushed it to 7. So it didn't turn the game. The Ravens immediately got the ball back and couldn't do anything with it anyway. I don't agree with that. It didn't suddenly change things.
It flipped on its head because they didn't have Derrick Henry, as a main focal point of that offense anymore. Lamar Jackson was just dropping back to pass, and he was getting, berated the rest of the game. I mean, we saw that. That's where I think it did flip on its head. Where the Baltimore Ravens did have an advantage is when they were drawing up plays to run with either Henry or Lamar. But again, they got away from that, and they had success against that Lions secondary with Bateman and company, as you did state. But when you're not having one of your best players on the field and you're not using them towards an advantage, that did kind of flip it on its head. And when they went 3 and out or they had those short drives, I mean, Lions were just eating them at that point. They were taking away time, and they were just playing the field possession at that point. My next point of emphasis that I wanted to talk about too was...
Before we get to that, I just want to put a bow on what you're saying. That happened in the fourth quarter with the Lions up 4. I want to emphasize that. The Ravens' run game got off to a hot start in the opening drive. I think Derrick Henry's averaging a dozen yards a carry. I think he only 3 carries, 36 yards, and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson had a quick 25 yards rushing. But after that, they both were completely slowed down by that Lions defense. The Lions adjusted defensively after that opening drive and loaded up the box and shut down the run, and that's a big part of the reason why the Ravens had so much success in the passing game. But they still got 7 sacks, and a lot of that's on Lamar Jackson, who was definitely holding the ball too long and needed to get rid of it and at least give his receivers a chance. It's great he has this streak of never throwing an interception on Monday Night Football, which should have ended. Brian Branch should have had an interception, and the Ravens got a field goal out of that possession. So if we're talking about teams getting field goals, they each had one off the Derrick Henry fumble, the other one off a dropped interception from Brian Branch, the Pro Bowl safety. So I don't think it's fair to make it seem like that play was the deciding factor in the game. I disagree with you. The Lions would have won anyway, but go ahead with your second point.
Yeah, I think the Lions defense also had a great game plan, and even with the game plan, they had a lot of adjustments too as well. I think one of the bigger weaknesses against a Baltimore Ravens style offense, which loves to be able to have RPOs, dump offs with the backs out of the backfield or shallow crossing routes, etc., and a lot of crossing routes in general with the receivers. You play a lot of man coverage. And we saw that last night. The Detroit Lions mixed up a lot of their coverages with either zone and or man. I believe they were running yesterday, as I recall correctly. 27 plays against the Ravens last night were in man. And let me tell you, they were really harassing at that time when they were playing man. They were harassing Lamar Jackson. We saw that he had that one throw that he was trying to get over. I believe it was to Mark Andrews, but Anzalone was on him. Now, Andrews maybe should have caught that pass, but still, I mean, Lamar was under duress. And when you can't have separation, I mean, for God's sake, Zay Flowers didn't even show up in this game. And he's one of their big weapons.
I think that was the game plan coming in, was to take him away by the Detroit
Oh, yeah,
Lions.
absolutely.
Doesn't even mention, though, the quarterback for Detroit, Terry and Arnold, who was horrible all of last year, was horrible again last night. I mean, really bad. I think he had 2 pass interference calls, which he had a bunch last year. So that needs to be noted for the man coverage.
Yes, but I'm talking for the overall game, though, the overall game aspect. But still, I thought it was a great game plan, and I think that's what definitely gives Baltimore some headaches. I mean, if I really wanted to kind of dictate, the tape back as well, I mean, we saw what Kansas City did when they came in marching in the AFC Championship game against the Baltimore Ravens. They were blitzing Lamar, and they were playing man coverage, and they were really making life a hell for Lamar. So if anything, that could be the weakness, because we've seen Lamar. When you're playing in zone coverage, he will pick you apart. That's a great of a quarterback he is in the league. And then my last little point here. This is crazy now that we just witnessed Baltimore lose on Monday night to Detroit in the way that they did, even if the score was close by 8. Now they're about to go to Kansas City. I know this is far ahead, but
I was going to say, you talked about them playing the Chiefs. They're going to Kansas City on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah,
it does need to be noted as well. 2 years ago in that AFC Championship, the Ravens did not have Derrick Henry, just to throw it out there. So a little bit different. But go ahead. What are we talking about with the Chiefs and Ravens?
I'll give you that. And then on top of that, whoever does end up losing is about to go 1-3 on the season so far. And neither of us had that in the works going into the start of the season, I thought.
It's a 17-game season.
It's a 17-game season, but
season.
I don't think 1-3 for Baltimore or the Chiefs would have seemed fit. But that's it for me.
I don't think we expected Xavier Worthy to get hurt in the third play of the season and miss the next 2 games, and we'll see if he plays on Sunday. And I definitely don't think we expected the Ravens to be down 2 Pro Bowlers in their front 7. I mean, we knew they were going to be without Isaiah Likely and Patrick Ricard, who haven't played this season. But that's massive. So I think that has a lot to do with it, and we'll just see game by game, but. I'm less focused on that and more of the excitement that game could potentially bring, and we'll see who does and doesn't play. We obviously hope players get healthy and play well. Sure. I do want to mention one final thing, and I'm going to hype him one more time. Amon-Ra St. Brown, a lot of the game is being covered by the Ravens' first-team All-Pro cornerback, Marlon Humphrey, who for years has been one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He destroyed Marlon Humphrey, absolutely embarrassed him. Amon-Ra St. Brown is so good. I did like, by the way, the play calling from the offensive coordinator. We saw a little bit of Ben Johnson. I guess I have a second point. A little bit of Ben Johnson in him. That play they ran with the backs on the 4th and 1 when they scored the touchdown, handing it off, and then to Amon-Ra St. Brown, then immediately tossing it to Jameer Sonic Gibbs, and he ran into the end zone for touchdown 5-6 yards out.
I love it.
That was awesome. It was a lot of fun to watch. And you mentioned the 4th and 2 play at the end. That was the big play in the game, and they threw it deep to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, despite being helped by Marlon Humphrey, still beat him and got that play to just put the icing on the cake of a monster game. And I'll make one more point. David Montgomery, outstanding game. That 72-yard run, to give one piece of credit to Marlon Humphrey. He did catch him. Lions scored a touchdown anyway, which was on the play we mentioned previously. And David Montgomery then had the long touchdown run that ultimately was the game winner in the end. It iced it right after Amon-Ra St. Brown made that play. So it was a fun game. A lot of fun to watch. Very good game. Good stuff. Let's go to a much more negative, somber topic that none of us ever wants to talk about, and it's the worst part of sports that we wish wasn't there, and that is injuries, and so often we're talking about torn ACLs. So, first, San Francisco 49ers perennial Pro Bowl defensive end Nick Bosa will miss the remainder of the season, meaning the final 14 games with a torn ACL. What are your thoughts on the outlook for the San Francisco 49ers for these final 14 games now without him? I will mention before I get to you on that, this is the second time that Nick Bosa has torn his ACL on the past 6 seasons. 5 years ago in his second season in the league in 2020, he tore his ACL in the second game of the season and missed the final 14 games that year. And the 49ers really missed him. They struggled and had a bad season without him that year. So here we are again. He's once again going to miss the final 14 games, albeit playing in the first 3, and he was playing great in these first few games. So it's a devastating injury. But what is your outlook for the 49ers for these final 14 games?
To be frank, not confident. Losing Nick Bosa, that's going to be really, really horrible on that defense. He was not the deciding factor, but yeah, of course. But Nick Bosa was the reason who had a strip fumble in the game against the Saints.
Yeah. He
was the same reason why they won the game against Seattle.
In Seattle, yeah.
I mean,
he closed those games out.
And one of the best attributes about Nick Bosa that most people, if they don't know, he is one of the best rush defender edge rushers in the game when healthy. The type of game that he had, this was many years ago against the Dallas Cowboys, which a lot of folks thought, well, Dallas was just going to run the ball all over the San Francisco 49ers. Nick Bosa lives in the backfield. He eats up the backfield runners. That's what he does if he doesn't get pressure on the quarterback. And I'm looking at their schedule now. You got the LA Rams, who have a running game. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who got a running game. We know that the I'll take that back. Atlanta has a running game. Arizona, I mean, I could go on and on. There are a couple of teams right now looking down the barrel that if they don't get their stuff together on defense, they could possibly be in the opposites of where they were now, where they were winning very close games and their big players showed up in big times. And now not having him with that, I guess, young defense, you would agree too, they're a very young defense. Yes, they are playing well, right, for their years in the NFL, led by Fred Warner, but still, that's a huge loss. And when you can't control one of the facets of the game, which is control the run game, you are going to lose time of possession, and you are going to end up losing more possessions to the other team, vice versa. So I don't like it, and I wish him the best. But this is, I don't know, the Bosa family, I mean, Joey, Nick, they always been dealing with these injuries. It's so sad to see because they really are, when they are healthy, they are star players in this league. Really, they are. I don't know what else you got to say on that.
Look, I'll just finish up by saying, because I agree with all those points, this is a massive loss for the San Francisco 49ers. We saw it 5 years ago. It hasn't changed. We know how good he is. He's made the past 4 Pro Bowls since going down with that torn ACL and coming back from it. He made the Pro Bowl as a rookie, so 5-time Pro Bowler in his 7 seasons in the league. The only 2 times he hasn't been are 2020 when he tore his ACL in the second game, missed the final 14 games, and then, of course, this year in 2025 when he tore his ACL in the third game and will miss the final 14 games. First team All-Pro and Defensive Player of the Year 3 years ago in 2022. He's an outstanding player. Yeah. Houston Rockets starting point guard and former All-Star Fred VanVleet has torn his ACL and will miss this entire season. What's your outlook for the Houston Rockets this year without him?
I think low-key this is going to be a very missed player by the Rockets. I also think that you're not going to be able to replicate what he does bring because they have so much young talent behind him that just I don't. Now, let me jump to the next subject. I meant to finish that part, but Fred VanVleet, he is 31 years old. Yes, he's been in the league for quite some time. We understand that as a player, he's more of a floor general. He's not the main focal point of the offense per se. He likes to definitely pass the ball around. He'll get involved with some of the shooting as well. He does have a decent three-point percentage shot, but where he really does make amends is by running the floor. Now, what you're going to miss with Fred VanVleet is the postseason experience. For some reason, every time Fred VanVleet does get into the postseason with whatever team that he's been on now, he does make a difference. And you can tell he performs better in the postseason.
He always has some big moments.
Does.
I mean, the Toronto Raptors and the Houston Rockets, who paid him a lot of money in recent years.
Yeah.
And he's had some big moments to make that count to some extent with both teams. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head there. I mean, yeah, he may be quiet in the regular season, but as soon as the postseason comes up, I mean, this guy is a pillar. He's shooting threes, making them, getting to the rim. I mean, he's putting his body on the line constantly every play. And you want to see that from your veteran. Now, behind him, and I know you'll probably discuss a little bit more on these guys, but now you got an Amin Thompson, who's got
he's
shoes
their
to fill.
Starting shooting guard and also first-team all-defense needs to be mentioned last year, a young player.
Yeah, see, you're going to discuss more on them, but yes,
Amin Thompson, but yeah.
Yeah, Amen Thompson. You also got Reed Shepard, who is probably their last, maybe true point guard that they have on the squad, but he's off the bench, really. And yeah, I mean, they also do have Holiday as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the coaching staff does, but I would assume that with this injury of an ACL injury, those players are definitely going to be on a short leash. They may want to look for somebody come maybe the trade deadline to maybe to get in because they're in win now mode, especially going after Kevin Durant. So I don't know what your takes are, but I kind of feel like this is a really low-key bad loss.
No, I'm in full agreement. I mean, look, there's a lot of buzz and excitement around the Houston Rockets. They were the 2 seed in the West last year, lost a 7-game series in the first round to a great Golden State Warriors team. Alperen Sengun, their center, was an all-star. You mentioned it. Their starting shooting guard, Amen Thompson, was first-team all-defense. Now you add Kevin Durant. Obviously, we know how great he is. Perennial NBA player, one of the greatest scorers of all time. Outstanding in all that he can do. So you're expecting him and Alperen Sengun on offense, and with what Amen Thompson can do defensively, we're looking at this like, okay, here's Fred VanVleet to run the point, and be that other guy. I mean, he could be the third option on offense. That's a good third option to have. That fits a role for him right now at this point in his career. That seems like a better role for him than what he's had in previous years at this point in time. And you lose that guy, and you start to wonder, who's the starting point guard? What does the depth look like at that position and overall in this team? And how much can they really do? I mean, that really hurts them. And we'll see who they sign to fill that roster spot, and if it is a point guard and what caliber they are. I mean, who's really available at this point? We're getting ready to start, this season again, to the preseason. So it's a big loss and tough, and I think it knocks the Houston Rockets down of our expectations for them with how difficult the West is and the NBA overall. I just don't think we're talking about a championship in Houston. I don't think we're talking about them being the 2 seed again. I don't think we're talking about them even winning a playoff series, certainly not getting to the Western Conference Finals, let alone the finals, let alone winning it, as I mentioned. I just don't think we're having all of those conversations about them at this point in time, but I mean, I get it. Rockets fans are still going to look at it and say, we have Kevin Durant now. We still have Alperen Sengun. We still have Amen Thompson. So we'll see what happens. But for the city of Houston and their sports, man, Joe Mixon, their Pro Bowl running back from last year, is missing this season. Their slot receiver, Tank Dell, is missing this season. They chose to replace those guys with Nick Chubb and Christian Kirk, respectively. So we'll see what they do with Fred VanVleet, but it's tough. I mean, fortunately for them, the Astros are healthy as the regular season winds down and really good and really talented once again, like always. I mean, we'll see how the rest of the Texans season goes and how the Rocket season goes. We wish all the best for them in H-Town, but that's tough.
It's not like really Fred VanVleet has been injury prone in the past either. I mean, he's been durable somewhat throughout his entire career. So this was definitely shocking. And when you broke the news, I definitely jaw dropped because I'm like, oh man, that's a big blow, man. I mean, same thing with Joe Mixon too. I mean, Joe Mixon's not an injury prone guy either. I mean, he's been one of the most durable running backs.
But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But during his career in Cincinnati, but still, I mean, Houston just can't catch a break, like you said.
Yeah, and look, we wish all the best for Fred VanVleet and his recovery, and all these players, Nick Bosa, even Joe Mixon and Tank Dell. We look forward to seeing them back on the field to start their respective seasons next year. We hope that they are and playing at a high level like we've seen them at in the past. And we know there's plenty of other injury news that we need to get into, and we touched on some of it if you go back and watch our takeaways from this weekend in the NFL. As we went through those games, we touched on a lot of his injuries. We knew as soon as we saw some injuries with running backs like James Conner when he was carted off, and we saw the injury happen, we knew it was season ending. It's been confirmed that it was. We knew Najee Harris had torn his Achilles. It has been confirmed that he has. The same thing. We wish all the best for those two running backs, former Pro Bowl running backs, and being back in the field start next season and at the level we've seen them play at. And I mean, for the Los Angeles Chargers, their first round draft pick, rookie running back Amarian Hampton, that's who they're relying on heavily now. So look, we wish all the best to these guys, but that's it for today. We will be back next time, guys. But until then, until the next episode, for Nelson Jordan, I'm Chris Nelson. This has been the First and Final Word.